HQ presented by Jersey Mike Subs. We've got the Ion College Basketball Podcast crew back with us. Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander. We're going to run through the SportsLine Optimal Bracket, guys. And this is all the simulations that SportsLine does. Teams winning more than 50% of the time automatically advance in this bracket. So let's start in the West. That's where Gonzaga is the number one overall seed for the tournament, the number one seed in this region. And obviously you've got Gonzaga advancing past Georgia State. And then the 8-9 game, Boise State and Memphis. It is Boise State getting past Penny Hardaway's team. Moving down to Connecticut, New Mexico State. That's going to be a popular upset pick, Connecticut winning. And Matt, this is your game to watch here, Vermont and Arkansas. And our bracket has Arkansas winning this, but why do you think Vermont has a chance?
Because Vermont is one of the hottest mid-majors entering into this tournament. It's got two-time America East Player of the Year Ryan Davis along with Ben Shungu. They are, I think they just happen to be well built to face Arkansas. Arkansas is obviously going to win out in simulations here, no doubt about that. But by pure nature of upsets, you're picking a team that's not likely to win more than 50% of the time. And Arkansas is a tricky one. I think it could go out in the first round. I also think Arkansas has got the capacity to beat Gonzaga in the Sweet 16.
I think you might be surprised. There are some upsets here, even though these are simulations that normally favor the favorites. And we see it right here with the winner of Rutgers-Notre Dame advancing past Alabama to the second round of the tournament. Texas Tech beating Montana State. Down to the Duke part of the region. Coach K could be his last week as a head coach. Davidson advancing past Michigan State. Duke advancing to take on Davidson. That would be an interesting coaching matchup. Bob McKillop has been doing it a really long time. So let's go to Gonzaga, Boise State. Saturday, Portland, Oregon. And Gonzaga advancing to the Sweet 16. And it's UConn, the 5 seed, getting past Arkansas. Down to the bottom of the West region, that Rutgers-Notre Dame play-in winner taking on Texas Tech. The Red Raiders winning there. Duke beating Davidson to advance. And that sets up a pretty chalky Sweet 16 with Gonzaga getting past Connecticut. And does Coach K survive? Yes, he does. Gary, Gonzaga and Duke for the right to go to the Final Four. What a matchup that would be between the number one overall seed and Coach K in perhaps his final game.
That's obviously the biggest and best matchup you could root for. I promise you, our bosses at CBS would like to see that happen. You get the number one overall seed, Gonzaga, on path to win its first national championship in school history. And to get to the Final Four once again, they got to go past Mike Krzyzewski and by extension end Mike Krzyzewski's college coaching career. That is the Elite Eight matchup that I've got in the West region. So if it materializes, that'll be the game of that weekend.
SportsLine has that being the end of the road for Coach K. Gonzaga moving on to the Final Four and winning the West region. So that's the SportsLine optimal path to the Final Four in the West. Let's go down to the East where Baylor is the number one seed, taking on Norfolk State in the first round. Baylor getting by them and moving on to face North Carolina, who SportsLine has knocking off Marquette. I think an interesting 5-12 matchup. St. Mary's against either Wyoming or Indiana. SportsLine likes St. Mary's to advance there and UCLA to get past the Akron Zips. Texas and Virginia Tech. Matt, the computers love Virginia Tech. SportsLine computers love Virginia Tech, not just to win this game, but to make a run. Why?
Well, first, Virginia Tech has actually projected well in metrics all season long. In fact, Virginia Tech's 23rd at KenPom. The Texas Longhorns, they're 15. They're slightly ahead, but coming off of what they did in the ACC tournament, I saw it in Brooklyn there. Mike Young's a great coach. Just real quick on that matchup. Fascinating head coaching styles, drastically different. The rosters are built differently. I think that game has the best potential to be the closest, most entertaining of all the 6-11s.
Okay, and Virginia Tech moving on to face a Purdue team that gets by Yale behind Jordan Ivey, one of the players to watch in this tournament. Best game of the first round might be this one on CBS Thursday night. Murray State in San Francisco Boy, San Francisco knocking off Murray State, according to our SportsLine projections, to take on the Kentucky Wildcats, who Matt said he had ranked 3rd overall in his 1-68 rankings of the field. So this is how the Sweet 16 looks in the East, according to our SportsLine Optimal Bracket. Baylor against North Carolina, last year's champion against a college basketball blue blood. Baylor advancing to the Sweet 16. St. Mary's and UCLA, an all-West showdown. UCLA getting past the Gales to set up a matchup with Baylor. And now Virginia Tech, told you they're going to make a run in this bracket. SportsLine loves the Hokies to get past Purdue. San Francisco losing to Kentucky. So an 11 seed into the Sweet 16 in our SportsLine Optimal Bracket. Baylor and UCLA, Gary, that would set up quite the matchup this season as we look back to last.
Yes, I mean, those are 2 Final Four teams, and, I personally have UCLA winning that game. As you know, Baylor is the number 1 seed. Scott Drew, I think, should get votes, if not win National Coach of the Year, given, what he's done, at Baylor the year after the national championship. They lost 4 starters from that team, stayed at the top of the sport all season, lost 2 rotation players from this season's team, still a 1 seed, but the availability of L.J. Cryer, Baylor's leading scorer, remains uncertain. He's only played once since January 25th, has not played at all since the middle of February. I'm assuming that L.J. Cryer is going to be unavailable in this NCAA tournament. And if he is, I think UCLA might be the better team then.
But SportsLine has Baylor advancing and Kentucky ending the Cinderella run for 11 seed Virginia Tech. So it's 1 versus 2 in the East region to go to the Final Four. And it is not chalk. It is the Kentucky Wildcats to come out of the East and take on Gonzaga in the Final Four. So we've completed the left side of the bracket in our SportsLine Optimal Bracket. Let's go to the South region. Arizona, the number 1 seed, getting past the winner of Wright State and Bryant. In the 8-9 matchup, it's Seton Hall taking out Jamie Dixon's TCU team. Down to Houston and UAB. The Blazers and Jelly Walker could be an interesting story this March. Jelly Walker, one of the best scorers in college basketball, but Kelvin Sampson's Houston team gets by. So does Illinois past the Mocs. Colorado State and Michigan. Gary Parrish says Michigan's going to be the Cinderella of this tournament, but SportsLine has Colorado State beating Michigan in that matchup. And Gary, that's a Colorado State team as Tennessee gets by as well. Colorado State team, they blew out St. Mary's earlier this season, and they've got a guy named David Roddy, you know very well, and the Rams have a chance to make a run.
David Roddy is terrific. Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, traditional undersized big, 6'5", 250. He's got a chance to be one of the real breakout stars of this NCAA tournament. Sister
Jean is in it again. Loyola Chicago, a 10 seed, taking on Ohio State. SportsLine not buying in to Loyola this season. It's Ohio State getting by to take on Villanova. Jay Wright's team getting past Delaware, the 15 seed, in that Friday afternoon game. All right, to the Sweet 16 we go in the South region, and we're talking with Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander of the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. Arizona, the 1 seed, getting by Seton Hall, and it's Houston taking out Illinois. It's a Houston team that didn't have a lot of great wins this season, just beat everybody that they were supposed to beat, and a Final Four team from a season ago. Colorado State and Tennessee, many thought Tennessee should have had at least a 2 seed in this tournament. But how about this, Matt? Colorado State, the winner over Tennessee.
If we get Colorado State versus Tennessee in that second round, it's going to be an incredible matchup, and in large part because Tennessee has one of the best point guard prospects to the next level in Kennedy Chandler, but it's also got a great fellow freshman in Zakai Ziegler. And yet, we've got to be honest, Isaiah Stevens is just as good of a point guard as Kennedy Chandler. We'll have an incredible backcourt matchup, and then I don't know how Tennessee handles David Roddy in that kind of situation. I actually happened to speak with Colorado State coach Nico Medved late on Sunday night as he was preparing for Michigan and trying to figure out how they were going to stop Hunter Dickinson and that really talented Michigan team. But I actually like Colorado State's matchup more with Tennessee. Even though it should have been a 2 seed, I like the matchup for CSU more with Tennessee than I do with Michigan. So that'll be super intriguing. It would not surprise me whatsoever if the Rams wound up breaking through to the Sweet 16.
Well, that's what SportsLine has. Colorado State to San Antonio in the South region to take on Villanova on March the 24th. So there you have the matchups here with Arizona getting past Houston and Villanova ending the run for Colorado State. Arizona's a team that was way under the radar to start the season, Gary, and because they're out west, because they're in the Pac-12, I would imagine that not many casual fans have seen Arizona that much this season.
Yeah, I don't believe there is an East Coast bias, which is what people on the West Coast always say. But I do believe there are bedtimes. People get tired, and it's hard to stay up late to watch a lot of West Coast basketball if you live in the Eastern time zone and even sometimes the Central time zone. But boy, if you've missed Arizona, you've missed somebody that is a legitimate national championship contender. I mentioned earlier that Scott Drew should maybe be National Coach of the Year. If he's not, my vote would go to Tommy Lloyd at Arizona. He is a longtime Gonzaga assistant who was in place to replace Mark Few whenever Mark Few retired. But when Arizona offers you that position, you stop waiting to be a head coach and you accept the opportunity. To be fair to the previous staff, they left him with some really good pieces, but he has turned it into a great product. And for whatever it's worth, Sunday night when we were in studio for CBS Sports Network, there were 6, quote, analysts in the studio. We were asked to pick for a national champion, and 4 of the 6 picked Arizona as the national champion.
Wow. Okay. Arizona advancing to the Final Four in the SportsLine bracket out of the South. One more region to go. That's the Midwest. It's Kansas, the number 1 seed, moving on past whoever wins between Texas Southern and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. How about that? Texas A&M gets in, but it's A&M Corpus Christi, not the Aggies. San Diego State beating Creighton, a Creighton Blue Jays team that made a run in the Big East tournament. And then down to Iowa and Richmond. Richmond made a run in the A-10 to win it and get in. The Hawkeyes, the winners of the Big Ten tournament, advancing. And Providence, South Dakota State. That's a game that's just a 2-point spread, but SportsLine does like Providence to advance past Iowa. Down to the bottom half of the Midwest. LSU getting past Iowa State. And Matt, Colgate over Wisconsin?
Okay, so real quick on this. I made my picks for the site, for CBSSports.com on your CBS Sports app, which I retain the autonomy and authority to change before we get to Thursday. But I made them on the phone last night, and I have this upset. I have Colgate beating Wisconsin. Matt Langle, and I might have to switch it back here. This is a weird part of the bracket here. Matt Langle has done a phenomenal job at Colgate, which has given teams, including Arkansas a year ago, some scares. Colgate is the second best three-point shooting team in the tournament. The only one that's better scoots just north up in this very region, and that's South Dakota State. The Raiders shoot 40.1% from three-point range. It's got a shot against Wisconsin there. This is a viable 14 over 3, which would not stun me if it came to pass.
Wow, okay, let's move down to the 7-10 game. USC getting past Miami, and the Auburn Tigers beating Jacksonville State. As we continue to move through the Midwest region on our SportsLine Optimal Bracket, Kansas taking on San Diego State. Kansas winning there. Iowa, if they play Providence, even though they're the 5 seed, they're going to be favored by maybe maybe 2 possessions against Providence, not double figures, but Iowa advancing past there. LSU beating Colgate, and Auburn matching up with LSU in Chicago in the Sweet 16. So Kansas and Iowa. Gary, the computers love the Hawkeyes, and SportsLine has Iowa in the Elite 8.
Ooh. You know what? With the way they've been playing and, the way Keegan Murray has been operating, that's not surprising to me. I'll keep this simple. If you can win the Big Ten tournament on a neutral court, you can beat Kansas on a neutral court. Kansas is worthy of its number 1 seed. But even Bill Self would tell you this is not one of his most talented rosters. Iowa, advancing in that spot, again, would not be that big of a surprise. It would technically be an upset, but very small.
Iowa, Auburn, for the right to go to the Final Four, and it's Bruce Pearl becoming another 2 seed to reach the Final Four in our SportsLine Optimal Bracket. So 2 1s and 2 2s in the Final Four. It's Gonzaga, Kentucky in one Final Four, and Arizona, Auburn in the other Final Four. Let's get to our Final Four picks. It's Gonzaga, Kentucky, and Gonzaga beating Kentucky to make it to the national championship game. Arizona beating Auburn, setting up a national championship, fellas, between Gonzaga and Arizona. Matt, you can go first.
Well, first, that would be quite a story. As GP mentioned, Tommy Lloyd spent 2 decades serving as an assistant for Mark Few at Gonzaga and was the coach in waiting before he took this Arizona gig. And at Gonzaga, Arizona, they've rated as the #1 and #2 team in multiple predictive metrics for basically about a month now, so that would not be all that stunning. You'd have Gonzaga making his 3rd national championship game since 2017, and a year removed from Gonzaga making the title game with an undefeated record. It's interesting. I don't think this Gonzaga team is as good as last year's, but in some ways it's more well built and equipped to win the national championship. So for Gonzaga to face off in Arizona against Arizona, not surprising at all. That's also for your play-at-home bracket pools and your CBS Sports bracket games. You will see that will be the most popular national championship matchup. Will be Gonzaga versus Arizona.
And Gonzaga is the winner in our SportsLine Optimal Bracket, Gary. SportsLine simulations have Gonzaga winning more than 1/3 of the time. No other team is even close.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the computers have been saying all season. You know, people who follow the sport on a very surface level, you know, love to insist that Gonzaga isn't really the best team in the country, that the Zags would not be rated #1 in all of these computers if they played, you know, in the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC. The truth is the computers take all of that into account. They take, you know, who you're playing into account. And Gonzaga still rates as the best team in the country by a significant margin. Their adjusted efficiency margin at KenPom is more than 5 points better than anybody else. You know, they've got 2 of the best 5 college basketball players in the country in Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren. You know, Holmgren is, you know, in the conversation to be the #1 overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft. They've got experienced guards, not a lot of depth. So, you know, foul trouble, any sort of injury could cause some problems, but you know, Gonzaga is my pick to win the national championship. You know, the computers suggest that they should be the favorite. It doesn't mean that they're the favorite over the field. You know, you should probably always take the field over any team when it comes to a single elimination tournament that requires somebody to win 6 games to get a national championship. But if you're looking for the team that's most likely to do it, my mind lines up with these computers. It is Gonzaga.
Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, fellas, I always appreciate the time. I know you don't have much of it this week. Completely stretched, wall to wall, not much sleep to be had. Fill out your bracket on the CBS Sports app. You'll have a chance to win a new truck and a trip to next year's Final Four. You can join bracket games, cbssports.com/brackets, or on the app. And it's not just the men. Join our women's bracket games as well and take Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.